To fast is to hunger for more of God. We fast to offer our whole selves, including our whole body, to God. To grow in holiness. To amplify our prayers. And to stand with the poor. Fasting is one of the most essential and powerful of all the practices of Jesus. It's an ancient discipline whose time has come.
Morning, church. Good to see everybody here. My name is Cesar Lopez, serve as one of the ministers here in the Valley Church. And next to me is Courtney Lotang. She'll be doing the interpreting for our ASL interpreting for our deaf community. And we want to say a special welcome again for everyone visiting here today. So it's great to have you. Special shout out if you're here for the first time online. It's great to have you. We know we have several here from visiting from our sister churches. And we want to say so thankful to have you here. We've got Richard and Susan here all the way on the other side where they need a passport to come here, Riverside. You know, that's a different time zone. And then we have also, I know Joshua and Gina from Fresno's here. It's great to have. This is Joshua and Gina. Their sons go to CSUN. And if you have any complaints about them, they're the one to talk to. Okay, and I know we had Russ and Lonnie here as well from the Lifeway Church. It's great to have you guys here. And if I miss you, I'm so sorry. But hey, if you're here, we've been talking about a very important spiritual discipline is fasting. I know it's a contradiction since we serve portals right after church. But we're doing something different today. We have no savory, so we're sort of weeding you out. But, you know, it's been a very, to me, a very life-giving practice. And I hope today that you will consider how important this is as we talked about different areas. David did a fantastic, wasn't last Sunday a fantastic service? You had our peeps from the Philippines. You had just a lot of good things going on. And David did a fantastic job as he talked about fasting and offering ourselves to Jesus. And what I hope that I can invite you to understand today about why fasting, we're going to be covering different reasons. If you remember, let me take it back. Since January, we've talked about fasting. And the first couple of weeks, we just wanted to get you to understand the importance of it. And then following that, we've talked about 4 different reasons why it's important to fast, to offer ourselves to Jesus. And today, we're going to talk about growing in our holiness. I know holiness can be a loaded word. I know holiness can intimidate some people, but I hope today that you'll be able to understand how important it is, how valuable it is to understand from the Bible, through God, through Jesus, the invitation to grow in our holiness. In Psalm 69, verse 10. Now, King David wrote this. It's a psalm about David. He was going through a tough time. He was having a spiritual inventory about what was going on in his life. And he was so humbled in life. He was so convicted about all the things that he has done that hurt people and hurt God. You ever felt like that before? And he says this in Psalm 69, verse 10. He says, I humble my soul with fasting. He talked about in this passage how he wept, how he was so contrite. But then he talked something about, he said something specifically about his soul. And he said, I humble my soul with fasting. You know, fasting has a lot of benefits. Fasting has its physical benefits. You know, you skip meals, it's a powerful practice. You know, there's a lot of perks to the body and the mind. When you fast, your body switches gears to burn fat for fuel, which you can lose weight and, believe it or not, even have a little more energy. It hits the reset button. Fasting can improve metabolism. It can reduce inflammation, even lower the risk of chronic diseases like diabetes and heart disease. On the mental front, it sharpens you. When you do a reset, it helps you get focused, get more clarity. It boosts the brain. It's not just a physical cleanse, but it's also a mental one, giving you a chance to break free from the noise, from the hustle of our daily lives, and any kind of distractions that can help us go deeper. But as anyone that wants to follow Christ, as Christians, as disciples, as apprentices to Jesus, who are really doing their best to be like Christ, to become like Christ, and to do what Jesus did, there's a certain type of impact that fasting has. You know what it does? It heals. It's sort of like a spiritual therapy. And what I mean by that, what it does, it hinders us, and it heals anything that hinders you and I from living out the will and the plan that God has for our lives. So the ultimate aim is not to lose weight or clean out our gut microbiomes, but the ultimate aim is what we find and discover is this: we get to answer questions like this. What is the Spirit of God trying to do and get my attention today? It's a huge question that most of mankind don't really figure out the answer and go their whole life not even knowing how to answer or what do you do with that question? But the Spirit of God is alive today. The Spirit of God is working in your life, the people you care about in this world. And that Spirit of God is so powerful that I believe if you and I can really open ourselves to let that Spirit alive get our attention, smack us in the back of the head sometimes, sure it goes up, to protect us and love us, not only will we be able to answer the question, what is the Spirit of God trying to show me in my life, but here's another powerful question. You ready? Where is the Spirit of God trying to guide me to engage and participate? It's not just being, oh, wow, that's what Spirit of God, but to participate. And that's one of the values of fasting, is that you get to go to a place that really just, oh, I see. I love this quote by Andrew Murray. It's a Christian, a theologian in South Africa. And he says this: prayer is the one hand with which we grasp the invisible. Fasting, the other with which we let loose and cast away the visible. There's a synergy between prayer and fasting as a spiritual discipline. Prayer described here is meant to connect us with God. It meant us to help us to understand there's a spiritual realm. While fasting, described in the quote here, what it is a practice of voluntarily giving up physical comfort to focus on spiritual growth. And together, these actions facilitate a deeper relationship, a connection with God. I don't know, coming in 2024, I need that kind of connection. I need that kind of anchor. In our crazy world right now, I can't tell you what's going to be in store in 2024. And there's a lot of fears, anxieties, uncertainties, worries, doubts, but I can promise you this. You do your very best to be open to grow spiritually. I believe, and I trust that you will have an incredible year. We can't just hope. We can't just wish. There are things that Jesus is trying to get our attention to be in a place, not live in anxiety, not live in fear, but a sense of holiness and a sense of purpose. And that's possible. You know, I fasted for about 2 weeks. And I said I said about, and I'll explain the about later on. But I went on a journey. Before I did, I read, I prayed, I said I'm going to count the costs. So about 2 weeks, I didn't eat anything. So that's why every time I came here and preach, you all look like hamburgers and hot dogs to me. Some chicken adobo, some lumpia. But I tell you what, in those 2 weeks, I got to experience and see things in a spiritual realm that was like, wow. I also got my first ticket in over 30 years. My third day of fasting, and I got a ticket. I didn't get upset. I didn't blame my wife. Why didn't you tell me the police was there? You know what I did? It's on me. It's on me. And there was a sense of peace that, okay, on my Sabbath, I got a ticket. I kind of tickled. And then I hear this voice up there that God is saying, have you considered my servant Cesar? And then I heard God saying, nah, that's on you. But you know what I'm saying is that I was able to experience a deeper walk, a quality. And I also was able to see deeper things in my heart. I was able to see how pride can manifest itself in entitlement. I realized that fasting is a mirror to our soul, showing us what's really holding us back from having this spiritual breakthrough. That sometimes you may feel like you're just going around and around in a wheel, same old problem. And then you're trying to figure out how can you change this and that so you could change something here. But there's some things in our life that in our power, we can't change it. There's some things in our life that we are just repeating or experience some sort of repeat, hurt, fail, disappointment. But that's the perfect place where you have an opportunity to look at it in a spiritual lens. That's the perfect place where the Spirit say, I've been trying to get your attention. You know, you can't do this on your own. You know, if you did, you wouldn't need God. But let me show you in these places of conflict, disruption, frustration, uncertainty. I promise you, you really do your best to live out the life that Christ wants you to live. By practicing and hearing the words of Christ, you will see God not only show up, but how he wants to work in your life. But to me, I saw my heart. I saw my heart, but then I also saw, this is the word that I hope you can understand here today, spiritual opportunities. Spiritual opportunity. And here's one I give you towards Christ. Look what he says here in Luke 9:23. He said, whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross daily. Sometimes we could drive by this scripture, but if we really just took one day to think about this scripture, if we took 1 week to think about this scripture, if we took 1 month, let me back it up, if we took the whole year, what if we take our whole life? Because that's what Jesus is trying to help us understand. He's not trying to say, hey, I'm not looking for popularity. I don't need the popularity. I'm looking for quality. I'm not so worried about quantity, but I want a quality relationship. And he said, if you want to follow me, here's the invitation of life of self-denial. And Jesus will never call us to do something that he's never done. That's not the Jesus we roll with. And this invitation to live a life of self-denial is Jesus inviting us to live this life, same life, that's centered around the cross. So what does that mean? This invitation to pick up your cross daily if you want to be an apprentice, if you want to be a disciple. And I think that's the big question for any Christian today in 2024. Any Christian, you could ask any Christian, you can ask yourself this, you can ask me this. Do Christians today want to be disciples of Christ? A lot of people want to be Christian. Oh yeah, woo! John 3:16. But really, that is the question. And many of us, we answered that question before because things were fresh and raw and we surrendered. But how about going through it again and again and again? Do we really want to be Christ's disciples? Do we really want to live this type of life of self-denial? Fasting helps us understand and develops the spirit of self-denial because it reflects not only giving up, but it reflects a life called being cruciformed. To live in the cruciform means to live a life that reflects the cross. There's a constant transformation. But here's the challenge. Can I tell you the challenge? Can I tell you the challenge? The world says, if it feels good, do it. It's called the pleasure principle. And you thought that came from Miss Janet Jackson. It's the principle that if it feels good, I'm going to do it. But you know what? Fasting helps us grow and moves past just chasing what feels good. It teaches us to stick with what's right, the choices, even when it's tough, and to stay joyful when we don't get it our way. Even the author in Hebrews says that the sin is pleasurable. Sin feels good. And it does when you think about it. But it also says that sin feels good only for a short time. And so many times we want that quick fix feel. I'll do it because it feels good. And if it hurts somebody, I'm willing to pay because I don't think about how it's going to affect other people. But in the pleasure principles that Miss Janet Jackson taught me, I'm going to do it. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to blame Miss Janet Jackson. For some reason, it just came up. Fasting helps us grow and moves past chasing what feels good. So when the storms of life come, when other people make choices that affects us, or even when God's plan don't matches ours, when you're in the posture, when you're living out a practice, when you're living a life that's God-centered, that denying yourself is not a punishment from God, but actually it's a form of love. Because one of the highest forms of love is self-denial. Anybody mess with my boo, I have no problem denying myself. My wife is sick, whatever time, how far, I will make sure she's going to be okay. It's self-denial. If parents, you hear the baby crying, and you know what the husbands do? Wife, can you go check it out? But hey, no. You say, no, babe, I got this. Go to sleep, babe. Got it. Hey, babe, how do I warm up the bottle? If I check the baby now, can you just take care of the diapers, but I'll take care of everything else? But the question today is this: how's self-denial going for you today? I'll only deny myself if I get something back. I'll only deny myself if there's a good, healthy ROI. That's not what Jesus says. Jesus called people to live a life of self-denial because it reflects the cross. Deeper, it reflects Christ. Drawing on the power of the Spirit of God. You can't pick up the cross on your own power. It's hard to forgive. I mean, you may forgive mentally someone, but man, if you want to go deeper and forgive that person, whoo! We need Jesus in that part. And yet, to put it another way, that's how we grow in holiness. The Western world wants us to live in the state of comfort. So let me give you this analogy. You probably heard it in different analogies, but a man traveling through the mountains ran into this older guy, and he had 2 dogs. And both dogs were the same size. And they fought all the time. Can you put the slide on the dog, please? There you go. So, the visitor said to the older guy, so your dogs fight all the time. So let me ask you a question. Who usually wins? And you know what he said? The one I feed the most. The one I feed the most usually wins. Every one of us have some sort of dog in you. 2 dogs. You got the flesh and you got the spirit. And many times what happens is that they're at battle with each other. Man, all the time. Even when you're sleeping, when you're tired, when you pass by the table of Portos, But here's the question. Which dog is stronger in your life? And the only way you'll know which dog is stronger, and you could take a look at this in your own inventories, which one you feed the most. Well, I feed the spirit. Okay, let's go further. Ask the people that love you. Ask them, which one I feed the most? And what do I mean by that? Because you can feed one and starve the other. You feed the flesh, and you're more consumed by what feels good, and you're not conscious about what does God want, what's important to me, what makes me feel good, what I want, my agenda. Eventually, you're going to starve the spirit. If you learn how to feed the spirit, like through fasting, through prayers, through Sabbath, through confession, through community like this, through the Bible, when you feed that spirit, guess what? You'll eventually make the flesh weaker because the spirit will be stronger. So the question you got to ask yourself today, if I want to grow my holiness, I got to be aware on who am I feeding the most. Does that make sense? Because willpower is not enough. You need the Spirit of God to transform you. So if you want to grow in your holiness, if I want to grow my holiness, I got to feed the Holy Spirit. See, it's nothing but the dog in you. I'm sorry, let me go back to my lesson. See, the gospel, here's the thing, the gospel is redemptive. What do I mean by that? There was a Friday and there was a Sunday. There's a death and a resurrection. There's a willingness to grow in holiness. You know what? You're going to see that there's hope. So that's why fasting is so important. It's like taking your soul, treating your soul to a spa day. Christian leaders and the ancient disciples, they knew that fasting was so important to go to another level of holiness. Look in Romans chapter 7. You guys with me? Look what Paul says right here. And this passage is a passage you got to go back and read this week. Look what he says. We know that the law is spiritual, but I'm unspiritual, sold as a slave to sin. I do not understand what I do. For what I want to do, I do not do. But what I hate, I do. And if I do what I do not want to do, I agree that the law is good. As it is no longer I myself who do it, but it's the sin living in me. For I know the good itself does not dwell in me, that is, my sinful nature. For I have the desire to do what is good, but I can't carry it out. For I do not do the good I want to do, but the evil I do not want to do, this I keep on doing. Now, if I do what I do not want to do, it is no longer I who do it, but it's a sin living in me that does it. Remember I tell you about the wheel? That was Paul experiencing right here. See, Paul was talking about that tug of war. The tug of war about what feels good between doing good and giving into temptation. The two dogs right here said, man, I don't know. It seems like I'm feeding my flesh more. I'm feeding that dog more, and he's winning. But I know what I need to do is I need to feed the spirit. And if you look at the Greek word for flesh, is starx, which means a craving, instant gratification. It means our sinful nature. Like the analogy says, is two dogs who are constantly battling each other. The one you feed the most is the one that's going to win. You feed the spirit dog with good choice, focus on God, it'll lead you to a life of love and purpose. Peace. You live a life where you feed the flesh dog, it'll take over what you want short terms, but it's going to drag you down. And it's all about which dog you choose to feed. You're going to follow Christ and pick up your cross. It's an invitation to feed the Spirit, to understand how fasting can help you develop that. Paul wrote that all the time to all the churches. In Galatians says, those who belong to Christ have crucified themselves in the flesh with his passions and desires. He wrote to the church in Colossians. He says that put to death everything, whatever belongs to your earthly nature, sexual immorality, impurity, lust, evil desires, and greed. Here's the thing. We cannot use the flesh to defeat the flesh. And what I'm saying is this. Willpower is not enough. It's not enough. We need the power of the Spirit to clarify. Willpower is great, but it only works when you want to make small changes. Yes, you can give up your latte. You can turn your head away from the Portos table today. But willpower versus pornography addiction, willpower versus drugs or alcohol, willpower versus outbursts of anger that stem from childhood trauma, willpower doesn't stand a chance. Fasting is a way to feed your spirit and starve your flesh. Fasting is a practice that taps into the strength of God. So can I share with you just a little bit about holy? Because I know we look at I can never be holy, you know. Okay, my wife can be holy, but I can never be holy. In 1 Peter chapter, can I share with you just a little bit? It's very important. 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 9, as Peter says right here, he reflects this passage with Exodus chapter 19, verse 6, where he talks about, you shall be to me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. And 1 Peter, he says right here, but you are a chosen generation, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, his own special people, that you may proclaim the praises of him who called you out of the darkness into the marvelous light. Great passage. The Hebrew meaning of holy is kodesh, but the root is kadash. Many times we understand holiness to be set apart. But if you really look at the definition, you know what holiness is? It's to be set apart for a special purpose. I'll give you an example. You right now have holy items in your house. If there's one thing my wife and I really make her struggle, you know what it is? Sometimes I will accidentally use her toothbrush. I said, tastes a little sweeter. Then Jennifer said, where's my toothbrush? Oh, I don't know, honey. I said, oh, babe, I'm so sorry. I used your toothbrush. I said, oh. So does she put it, and does she use it? No way. Jennifer chucks that toothbrush. What I'm trying to say, the toothbrush is a holy item. What I mean, hold on. It has a set special purpose for Jennifer. That's what it's meant for. You have a special toothbrush that you don't use to clean the toilet, right? You have a special toothbrush that you don't use to clean your shoes, right? It has a very special purpose only for you. Now, if you share toothbrush with your spouse, hey, more power to you. But here's the thing I'm trying to say, is that specific toothbrush in my house that's pink or blue, and I'm colorblind, that's why I mess up sometimes. If you see a purple and blue toothbrush next to each other, it's a goner. That's for Jennifer. What Peter was reminding the disciples there, what God was trying to remind the Israelites, is that he has a special plan for them. All the nations were messing up. And that special plan wasn't for them to be sinless, wasn't to be divine or holier than thou or super saint, but for a specific, special purpose. To be a light to all the nations. Amen. So I say that to you because when we think about that, it sort of makes it okay. Sometimes I can never obtain holiness. But when we look at the deeper understanding of it, is an invitation to know that God has a special plan for you, a special purpose for you. You are a special toothbrush in the eyes of the world. So, I hope through that it helps you understand how important to grow in our holiness. Now, can I give you an imagination of what it looks like? What does that mean real time, Lopez? Hey, Pastor, what does that mean to me? Okay, fasting, I'm getting there. I'm going to give up my Big Mac today. You know, I'll figure out. Hey, by the way, preferences, if you need, please get medical health advice if you can't, if you can't fast, please. I don't want you to come back, well, my minister told me to fast, and, now I'm in ICU, So please, get advice. Isaiah, look what happens here. Powerful passage. In the year, Isaiah 6. In the year that King Uzziah died, I saw the Lord high and exalted, seated on the throne, and the train of his robe filled the temple. Above him were seraphim, each with 6 wings. With 2 wings they covered their face, with 2 they covered their feet, and 2 they were flying around. And they were calling to one another. And in this vision, what Isaiah said and heard was this: Holy, holy, holy is the Lord Almighty. The whole earth is full of his glory, and the sound of their voices, the doorposts and thresholds shook, and the temples were filled with smoke. And he said in verse 5, "Woe to me," I cried. "I'm in ruin, for I'm a man of unclean lips, and I live among people of unclean lips. And my eyes have seen the King, the Lord Almighty." Then one of the seraphim flew to me with a live coal in his hand, which he had taken with tongs from the altar. With it he touched my mouth and said, "See, this has touched your lips. Your guilt is taken away and your sin atoned for." Then I heard the voice of the Lord saying, "Whom shall I send? And who will go for us?" And he said, "Here am I, send me." This is very important. I want to share with you just some things real quick. In the opening passage, it talked about King Uzziah. King Uzziah had it going on. King would do it great, but what destroyed him was his pride on success, his value in title, power, and position. He was struck with leprosy. He was banned from his people. And get this, he was banned from the temple of God. Now, what do we see Uzziah? That's Uzziah. But what do we see Isaiah? Isaiah is allowed to be in the temple. And there's something here I want you to understand. If you want to see what does it mean to live a holy life. You know what he says right there? He was so convicted. He was so afraid. And he said, "Woe to me." What does that mean? He was humbled. He says, "I'm in ruins. I'm undone. I'm an unclean man." It's the same thing that Peter said when Jesus told him, "Hey, throw your nets on the other side." And he saw the miracles. You remember what he said to Jesus? "Away from me, because I'm a sinful man." It's like we would come to that realization that, man, I just need God. And you know, that's a reflection of holiness. When there's a humility, understanding that, man, in and of myself, I just need God. And his attitude was, "Woe is me." That's very important because what he saw was he had this God-sized problem that he knew that only God can fix. Isaiah was broken about the sin in his life. He valued confessing his heart. He took responsibility from what was in his heart. In Psalms 120, "I call on the Lord in distress, and he answers me." Fasting helps us see why the cross is hard to pick up, and going to God in humility and love, our cross can be picked up. But here's the thing I want to show you. So many times, we don't have the "woe is me" attitude. You know what we have? Woe is you. It's easy to look at the shortcomings and the hurts of other people and go so fixated on that we say, "Man, all they need is God. I can't believe they're like that. Who did I think they are?" And then we say, I've done that. In my fasting, I remember I was talking about situations, and I just kept, and my mind said, "What am I saying? What's coming out of my heart?" That was really my heart. Criticalness, anger, frustration. I said, "Whoa, that's not good." I mean, we're coming into 2024. Elections is coming around the corner. And I want you to know, we're a church, we welcome all Democrats and we welcome all Republicans. We welcome all independents. But it's easy for us to say, I can't believe. We get so fixated on someone else's shortcoming that we don't see the 2x4 in our own eye. I've been there. So what we see is holiness is a time where we say, "Woe is me." We take responsibility for more. You want to change the world? Change your heart first. When I focus on what's wrong with others, two things happen. I forget how the gospel has changed me. When I lack sober judgment about myself, it's easy to judge other people's mistakes, thinking I know better. but I missed the point how much God has changed in my life. Because I'm naturally not a holy person. I'm naturally not a good person. And anything that has changed in my life is because of God. And when I'm fixated on someone else, I can easily forget how the gospel has changed my life. And you know what else happens? When I fixate on someone's shortcoming, I could easily doubt how the gospel can change that person's life. See, woe is me is the ability to look at ourselves first, that man or woman in the mirror. Because sometimes we can take things so personal. I love this quote. I saw this quote and I sort of added on to it. It says that the level of our offendability, and I know that's not a word. The level of our offendability often reveals the level of our spiritual and emotional maturity. Therefore, the need to grow in our holiness is an opportunity. You know, I know many here with Jennifer and the sisters and some of the brothers that have been doing emotional healthy spirituality. And Jennifer and I have been using this tool in our marriage. It's called Climb the Ladder of Integrity. When we have tension, we have disagreements, we go through this tool. And what it does, it helps us to stop, pause, and listen. And what I love about this set of questions, the majority of the questions directs a person to look on the inside first of themselves. See, that's the value in growing in holiness, is to be able to see what's really going inside. And that was the attitude that Isaiah had, was woe is me. And I invite you, as a minister here, I invite you to please be part of a family group, a community group of others that are trying to help each other in our spiritual journey and in our lives. Because we can all feel good right now and have our conversations 5 minutes, but you know what? You're going to get what you put into it. And you can't get much of Jesus just coming to 1 45-minute or an hour and a half, depending who's speaking, of spiritual encouragement. You need to be in a place where you can have it, and it's beautiful when you do. So I shared with you, I almost did 2 weeks. What happened was, I had about 2 days left, and then I was going to figure out going 14 days. And then I said, oh my gosh, honey, I forgot. We had an appointment with the family that we used to live by, because we just transferred places. And he's like a mom and dad. They're an Armenian family. And we scheduled this way in December, November. They wanted to say thank you. I said, but you know what? I'm going to stand strong. I called the daughter up. Hey, you know, Sasa, we look forward to getting with you. I completely forgot to tell you that I'm fasting. And I don't want to be disrespectful to Dad. Is it okay if you let them know that I won't eat? No problem. I said, whoosh, okay. I get there. The house was full of the children and the children's children. Friends. Because they all wanted to say thank you, because we took care of Mom and Dad when we lived next to them. And the dad cooked all day. And if you've never been to a barbecue, it's a sin of omission. You need to go to Armenian barbecue before you see Jesus. Because they're going to ask you in heaven, did you go to an Armenian barbecue yet? And can I show the picture, please? So that's mom and dad, and that's the children. That's just part of the kids. And if you look, they threw down. And they ordered special fish that came in. And I said, oh, Manville, I'm sorry, I'm fasting. Oh, no, not today, Cesar. No, come on. Jesus understand. Almost a week, almost 2 weeks. So I did what would Jesus do in a moment like this? I didn't have much of an appetite, but I ate some. And let me tell you, fasting, when you go in to start eating solid food, please do it wisely. But what I'm trying to say, in this spiritual tool, there's a side to me to be legalistic about it. Man, I said, wait a minute. We had a great opportunity to encourage and meet a family and their relatives. And they're all curious about what we do as ministers, missionaries, and following God. And we become like this. All I'm just saying, in this tool, don't beat yourself up. See what God is trying to show you in this. See, the aim of fasting is Jesus himself. And I close out with this: blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Fasting isn't just skipping meals. It's about connecting with God and participating in what he's doing in your life, in your family, in your neighborhood, in this world. Because God is already working. Sometimes you may say, I wish I could help that person know God. Trust me, God is already working in that life's person so he gets to know God. Maybe he's just trying to make sure you're ready to be used, toothbrush. It's like hitting a spiritual reset button, making us more alert to what God's up to and how can we participate. When we fast, we're not just looking inward, we're also gearing up to say, I'm here, God, what's the plan? It's about clearing up our act, our hearts, not for the sake of just being clean, but being ready to roll with God, especially when he says, I need you. Remember Isaiah? We got a glimpse of God's holiness. He was transformed, and what did he say? Sign me up. See, that's the vibe we're trying to invite you in the Valley Church. Posture, practice, discernment, participation in Christ. It's about getting closer to God, sure, but it's also about getting set to make a difference. To be part of the things God is doing. The discipline of fasting is a pathway to freedom. Let's not just fast for the sake of fasting. Let's do it to get ready. To say to God, woe to me, and here am I, sent me. Grow in our holiness. I want to thank you, and I pray that the scriptures today and the invitation that Christ is trying to call you today can be one where you can reframe, be excited, but to grow in holiness. Thank you. May we stand up and join us in the foyer outside, have a great fellowship, and may I send you off with a blessing. Let's bow our heads. May the kindness of God walk with you, the wisdom of God enlighten you, and the Spirit of God fill you with peace. As you step away from this gathering, may you feel the gentle nudge of God's voice guiding and comforting you. Let your journey of fasting open your eyes to see the ordinary in extraordinary ways. And find the sacred moments in the simplicity. Maybe a time where you grow closer to God, seeing your life through the eyes of grace. May you have the strength to let go of what holds you back and the courage to embrace the growth that awaits. May your days be marked by moments of stillness, joy, and small victories, and love that overflows. And as you go out, remember that you're not just walking on your own. You're walking into a story that's much bigger than yourself, with God leading you. Live this week with an open heart, ready to say yes, whatever calls comes your way, with the joy of knowing you're part of something divine. Friends, family, brothers, sisters, go in peace, feel the light of Christ, ready to spread his love wherever you are. Amen. God bless you.